What is up, Cobra Kai fans? Welcome back to the channel. My guest does not need an introduction. You all know Sean Chandler. Sean does reviews. He's a Rotten Tomatoes critic. He's a YouTuber like myself. And most importantly, he's a father. But how are you doing, Sean? I was just telling you now how much it's a pleasure to have you on. You know, just watching your videos and now you're on my channel. I think that's really cool. But how are you doing?
I'm doing good. As we were talking about just before we started, this is why I got started, is that I like to talk about movies and TV way too much, do the deep dives and everything like that. And on Twitter in the comment section, it's not as easy to do that as you'd think. And there's just enough crazy people. Well, Twitter's like all crazy people, including me. But Twitter's like crazy people. The comment section has so much friendliness, but just that 5% of crazy makes it tough to dive in there and have good conversations and do deep dives. So I'm excited to do this. And I didn't end up doing a spoiler review with anybody about Cobra Kai season 5 because of the way the universe played out. So we've actually just been talking about doing this for about a month now and finally able to do it. And I'm not at a film festival and everything. So I'm excited to start talking about Cobra Kai and all the fun stuff you have planned.
Yeah, for sure, man. I could only imagine how ransacked you were with all these like movie reviews and just everything that's been happening in the last month. It's been pretty hectic, right? So many shows have been coming out, and we were just talking now about how crazy it's been since the start of September, seeing, you know, House of the Dragon,
and premium, like top brands, Lord of the Rings, Marvel. And there's so much stuff, Star Wars, so much stuff, plus every normal thing that comes out. So yeah, it's just been a wild little bit of time.
Right. So let's get straight into Cobra Kai. Now, I saw your review on season 5.
Yeah, okay.
And it was interesting. So like, you said it wasn't your most favorite show. I mean, it wasn't your most favorite season. That's kind of how you felt, right?
No, it's not my favorite. I mean, I don't think there's a bad season of the show. I think all of them are entirely watchable, thoroughly entertaining. But this is one that I felt season 5 had really high highs and then also just a number of lows. It just felt like there was kind of more variety and quality versus like season 4. I just thought was like solid throughout. Season 1, I think, is top tier throughout. Season 5, it started a little clunky, got strong, had some standalone ones that I thought was a little bit odd. But yeah, so that's kind of my initial thoughts.
Yeah, it was, I think it was, I was surprised to hear a lot of people at first were really adamant on like, oh, season 5 was slow, and it had, you know, I heard a lot of these critiques, and because I'd seen it early.
Me too.
I mean, we both saw it early, so we kind of had our reaction right before, you know, the craziness of the fandom begins, and you know how they all felt about it. So I was going into it, and when I saw the first few episodes, I did not think for 1 second it was slow. I really enjoyed the ride, and I think you could really feel, you know, like the Mexico stuff. I mean, there are a lot of criticisms about, oh, it was rushed, you know, the start felt slow. And
they made such a big deal about who is Miguel's father. That was always kind of this lingering thing. And they go, let's actually explore that. And then that was just used to go, well, Johnny was his real dad all along. And so it felt played out real quick.
I think the Mexico stuff, for me, like the thing with Hector, I don't think they're done with that personally. I think they could come back to that. You know, like, I think they've set up something there they can come back to. I mean, if they don't use Hector again, then yeah, it is a very redundant trip. I think the trip for Miguel himself is kind of for him to understand that, because he's so naive. You know, I mean, he should have listened to his mum in the first place. I mean, he's going to Mexico on his own, trying to find the truth about his father, just because his sensei didn't find the truth about his father. So, you know, I get the bravery, I get where he's coming from. He's being naive though, so it's like a storytelling effect. For me personally, I think maybe why I like the the arc so much is because I personally related to that with
Mm-hmm.
my own experiences with my own father. Like, he wasn't there in my life, so there's that element of
Yeah.
what is the truth with your, if it's your father, if it's your mother or something. It really touched me on that. But
What I think thematically, it also, that's where some of these things are so tricky with it. This is what I'm talking about with the season. It's one that I feel more like ups and downs and all like,
yeah.
oh man, this really didn't work for me. And then the
Mm.
next thing I'll say is thematically, it fits really nicely with where the season is going, because a huge piece of the season is Johnny gets Carmen pregnant and they're going to
Yeah.
be a new family. And so then when you tie what they do in with Miguel realizing that his biological father isn't his dad, Johnny really is the father figure, and now he's going to be the literal dad that's there. It ties into this grander narrative really well. It sets up where things are going really well, and so that's where, even when not one of my favorite seasons, I do have criticisms. There's so many things that I'll just sit here and can rave and praise about it too.
Right. I think that's the crazy thing about this show. Like, you said it earlier on, there's no bad season. So I sometimes struggle trying to rank these seasons.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Like, it changes a lot. Because for me, before season 5, I was struggling to rank if I like season 3 more than season 4, and it would kind of change. How would you rank them right now?
I believe my current ranking, worst is 2. And worst means least best. Worst is not worst in
Yeah.
other rankings. Like when you say worst, you mean really bad. Worst here is like, if this is the line for good, worst is here. It's still a good bit above the line. I wouldn't even. I maybe would call it mixed good, but it's certainly good. And I just thought it was unfocused. So that was my feeling. And there wasn't someone to root for because everyone was kind of misbehaving. It wasn't building towards a tournament, so it wasn't as focused. Then season 4, I believe, where once again, when this season pays off, it's really good. It's great. And the way that it kind of crescendos at the middle when Daniel comes back in. Likewise, when you get to the end of the season, you're like, have the showdown with Chosen and Terry Silver. I mean, that little whole thing of you have all of Daniel's former villains teaming up.
Oh,
Man, like,
that's amazing.
how is that a real thing? That's like,
Yeah.
television is awesome these days. But I just felt the season as a whole was kind of odd. The way, like, it just felt like almost a genre shift. Because it is about, we got to tear down this corporation, and then like we got to spy on it and espionage, and then we're going to Mexico. So it just felt unfocused, and I felt some of it was a little bit too cartoonish. Then I believe I have season 3, which I love so much of season 3. I thought the Vietnam stuff, I like the idea of it. I thought the execution, it felt out of place with the tone of the show trying to tackle Vietnam, a real war where people really died. And that's really tough. And then then when you're doing like Mortal Kombat, like fighting over a pit of snakes with fatalities, I don't know. I just, that didn't quite work for me. So there's a few things that kind of held it back, but overall I thought season 3 really did a lot of stuff I loved. Then probably season 4, I was so nervous going into season 4 because I felt where season 3 ended that season 4 could be like an ending for the show that would really work. And then they sold me on it. In a Terry Silver coming back, and you take like this really ridiculous character from Karate Kid 3,
Yeah.
and then you make him into a compelling character, and you make Karate Kid 3 better, and he's so good. And then you have kind of almost like the Sith situation of like the Cobras are fighting each other for power. So good. And then you get to the end of it, and it's such a satisfying loss that the good guys didn't win, and you know why they didn't win. You're like, oh, and Tori sees just enough. Tori become a much better character. I don't think they can top season 1 for me because it's just tried and true classic formula. The show was more simpler at the beginning. I appreciate the simplicity of just a son in need of a father in need of a son, taking the classic Karate Kid formula and doing a wacky version of it. Johnny Lawrence is so different from Mr. Miyagi. And but that's what it's set up to be. And Miguel is way more naturally likable than Daniel. Daniel's not the most inherently likable character because he is a very big personality. Miguel's much more even keeled, and so it's just such a fascinating spin on everything. And then making Daniel kind of an antagonist in the season and seeing him in a bad place in life, but he's not entirely wrong. He's overreacting, which is what Daniel does. And I think for a lot of us, people my age, we thought Cobra Kai was a terrible idea. And we watched it because we wanted to crap on it. And it won us over. Like, I turned on the first episode, like, to my wife, and this is the first weekend it came out. It was on YouTube Red.
Yeah.
And they had, the first episode was free on YouTube. So we put on the first episode, like, let's put on this stupid new Cobra Kai show. Like, are you kidding me? How desperate is Ralph Macchio for a paycheck? Let's put this thing on. And we got to the end of it. And I was like, am I missing something? That was good.
It was good shit.
And right. And I like everything. And so I'm like, my wife is way more critical. So I look over and she goes, so we're gonna sign up for YouTube Red to watch the rest of it, right? Like, yeah, of course we are. So we watched 4 episodes that night, watched the rest of them later on, and I've rewatched every time a new season dropped, I've rewatched it. Usually I'll watch a lot of it 2 times each time it drops because it's so bingeable and quick and easy to watch. So I've seen even season 5, I've seen it twice. And then I've seen season 4, 3 times, and season 5, like 6 or 7 times. Anyway, that was a long answer to your question. You asked me like to rank them real quick. I'm not very good at.
I'm glad
I'm not able to do the like in last place is this, then this one. I have to talk about all of it. I'm sorry.
No, I'm glad you did because it's like interesting to hear. But like, I know like the typical list from what I normally see is each season gets better for fans. But yeah, it's interesting hearing that list because I know a lot of people also have number 2 like at the bottom of their list, and I have a friend who my friend Danny, he has like number 2 I think like top 2. I mean, he loves it.
That's just reading my comments. That's one of the things that I think, and we'll get into this, like why is the show so great, why is it people love it so much, what is it, the secret sauce. I mean, everybody gets something different out of it. Everybody connects with a different character, everybody resonates with it in different ways, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but my 8-year-old daughter, who probably shouldn't be watching it because of the language or whatever, she loves this show. So she watched through the whole show with me during my rewatch in like a 2-week period of time, and she was just as excited as I was. And then we finished season 5, and she's since then in the last month been like, so can we keep watching? Can we start rewatching again? She wants to keep watching it. She's 8. She didn't grow up watching Karate Kid. She's not a teenager in the middle of her own teenage angst. It just has like such broad appeal. Everyone picks up on something different. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and I just said I wasn't going to do that. You were saying your friend that loves season 2.
But no, like, yeah, like, speaking of the success of Cobra Kai, coming off what they did with the 2010 Karate Kid, like, did that affect like how you were feeling about seeing that first episode? Because you remembered what Sony did with the Jaden Smith stuff. Like, that must have sort of played a part, because even Ralph was, I remember him commenting on the 2010 film going, I wish them all the best, with this, but I hope it's good for what they're trying to achieve with it. But like, yeah, how did that sort of affect you, like thinking about Cobra Kai? Because obviously, like you said, you were just thinking, oh, I'm ready to bash this show. I'm ready to go all in with another crappy reboot, that kind of mentality.
Yeah, I've never been a hater of the Karate Kid, but there's all these really obvious criticisms of it. Like, it's called the Karate Kid, and they're in China.
Yes.
like I mean, there's a side to that I understand that's the name of the brand. So you have to call it that. And an aging Jackie Chan is a fantastic replacement for Pat Morita. That's a fantastic idea. But Jackie Chan does not know karate. And there's something incredibly ignorant and offensive about just being like, yeah, karate, kung fu, whatever. Like, right,
Yeah.
And that's the stuff we go into and you're like, what are we doing here? And I don't mind the movie. Like, it's obvious, it's a nepotism project. It always was. I don't really mind that because Jaden wasn't bad in the movie, but it's just kind of like, okay, yeah, we did this. Cool, that happened. And if you don't know, my history is back in the late '90s. I had a Jackie Chan fan webpage. So my start of movie punditry was in the late '90s with a Jackie Chan fan webpage, and there's like a picture of his body where you could click on each body part to figure out where he injured himself. So I'm biased towards that movie.
So cool.
Yeah, I'm sure I like to learn how to do all the coding for that because I don't actually know coding. So I just taught myself coding. So I'm sure it barely worked. I don't know, but it's like, what movie did which? Okay, he cracked a click on his head. Armor of God. He fell off a tree and cracked a hole in his head. But that's my history. So I'm biased towards wanting to enjoy seeing a Jackie Chan in a mainstream film again. But, you know, I'm in the mood to watch Karate Kid. Do I put on that movie or do I put on the original? I put on the original.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. I mean,
yeah.
I do. The film was, like you said, because it had the Karate Kid label to it. I think it's. And then you see his kung fu, you immediately go, okay, what is this? What is Sony thinking it? But if it was just called Kung Fu Kid, and they just, made it maybe a separate thing, and made that clear, then people would have probably gone with a more open mind. Like, okay, they're not trying to, touch the Karate Kid. They're just trying to swiftly use an idea, and be original with it, which I would have appreciated. But
I would say that
Jackie Chan.
Sorry. What would you say?
Like you saying about Jackie Chan, like I think that was a very big appealing factor because I love Jackie Chan growing up. Jackie Chan Adventures, that as a kid I freaking adored. I'm sure you even watched that.
I was a little bit old, but absolutely I checked it out. What they're doing a Jackie Chan cartoon? Let's check this thing out. So yeah, absolutely I watched it. I mean, like. By the time it came out, I was in my 20s, so I'm old enough that that's where I'm at. Yeah, I mean, that was just that to me. Jackie Chan was probably the person that made me go, "Oh, there's movies outside of the United States. Oh, there's movies that aren't just from Hollywood. Wait a minute." And that was such an important piece to discovering foreign films and discovering that there's all these ways in which other parts of the world are much better at things in movie making in the United States. Now, Hollywood has certain things they're great at. But man, once you discover that new flavor you've never had before at Hong Kong cinema, I was all in. And same then discover John Woo and the Gun Fu and the movies he did with Chow Yun-fat. But that's a rabbit trail. But yes, Jackie Chan. I mean, he's so watchable, but he's also is a good actor. And so he's known for being the silly guy. And the role of the Mr. Miyagi type in these movies is always of a broken father figure. It's a deeply tragic story that you forget about because all the whimsical humor and the wax on, wax off and, knock him out of the boat and everything. But, Mr. Miyagi's story is really tragic. That when you realize the reason, why is he so drawn to helping, whether it's Jaden Smith or Ralph Macchio, that type in the story, it's because of tragedy. And so getting to see Jackie Chan is pretty cool. But, at the same time, it's also a movie that kind of just rehashes what did come before. It is very much a beat-for-beat remake with a 21st century spin, which is, the crane kick was like an actual kick that all of us have tried in our living room.
Yeah.
And now my kids are trying. My son more so because it's in Fortnite. It is a emote. My daughter because she's following in my passion here, but. And what do they do in the 2010 movie? It's like a spinning backflip.
Oh my God.
He's like standing on one foot, and then this middle school kid is able to do a gainer kick to the face.
Like how?
Come on now, that's not a real move. I mean, I guess the crane kick's probably not really a real move that you would use. It's unblockable. Like, sure, okay, well, it's suspension of disbelief in that too, but. Of course, what's the 21st century? Everything has to be cranked up to 11 and ridiculous, so he's doing a backflip. But to the question of, a lot of the skepticism was that it looked like just a cheap, what property does not someone not have that YouTube can snatch? And YouTube Red was such a crappy service that it doesn't exist anymore. There's nothing else that came out of YouTube Red survived. It's like, well, what if we give Logan Paul a movie and like he's stupid for 2 hours? Like, right, because that's what it would be.
That was gonna work.
Yeah, great idea there. Like nothing else from YouTube Red worked, and out of the blue, there's this one thing that did, and that's why Cobra Kai wasn't a cultural phenomenon until 2.5 years later. It was like this cult thing that everyone that watched was like, this thing's really good, and everyone's like, I'm not gonna watch this show on YouTube, and then they dropped it on Netflix. YouTube Red disappeared. All their assets got acquired. Netflix bought it, and it became a cultural phenomenon that everybody loved because everybody already had Netflix. So they was like, all right, I've heard murmurs around this. Let me check this out. I bet it sucks. And it wins everyone over.
And it just goes back to, the fact that YouTube Red had one good show that came out of it is actually crazy. But
It's
the fact
so
that
good.
Netflix, you probably already know this, but Netflix was always the aim with the show. Like the creators wanted it to be on Netflix from day one, but Netflix didn't take it in the end. They took that chance with YouTube. YouTube came calling. And then, as soon as it does what it does after two amazing seasons, the ending of 2 just launching the show into like another length. Then they're like, oh, we want some of this. We could benefit from it. But yeah, the fandom. I mean, I didn't start my channel before. I think I started my channel just before or after the move to Netflix. But I'd seen it through YouTube Red, so I was very glad I'd seen it earlier before the craziness of the Netflix move. But why do you think this show was so successful? Like when you binged it and fully took it in, like why did you think it was such a great show? And why did it appeal to people?
I think some of it's really difficult to pinpoint. And I think it also ties into what is so special about it is that it just has some secret sauce to it, that it has very broad appeal. And it's able to stand on its own for people that have never seen The Karate Kid, and it still works totally fine for them. But I think the even harder sell is that all of us cranky middle-aged people that were born in the 70s and 80s, we watched it and we felt that it kept the heart of the original. Tonally, it's totally different. It is very much a comedy, but somehow it captures what we loved about the original, but just gives it this new spin, this new flavor. And it's able to do that, so balance all of these things of being faithful to the original while also having a brand new tone. It's able to draw in 40-year-olds like me that grew up watching the original trilogy, and it's able to pull in modern-day teenagers that would be opposed to watching the original Karate Kid because their parents like it. And why would I want to watch something that my parents are trying to get me to watch? and it bridges that. And I just think, whenever I first watched Cobra Kai, I was delivering paint at the time. And I had, my coworkers, all of us were in our late 30s, and my buddies were a little bit more get off my lawn. The 80s and the 90s were the best, and just purists. And I was like, Cobra Kai, I think you might actually like it. And they're like, I'm not going to watch this thing. Just check out this show that's going to tarnish the reputation. Jump forward, it drops on Netflix. And they're like, okay, I'm going to watch it to make fun of it. And probably my most cynical friend, that is the most purist of like 80s and 90s guy, 70s, 80s, 90s guy, he watched it. He texted me, whatever that was, fall of a couple years ago. He's like, I watched Cobra Kai. You were right. And right parallel to that, my 8-year-old, I guess at the time she would have been 7-year-old or whatever, she was into it too. And that's what's just so special about this show, is that it's able to do that. That it's able to be so faithful. It's able to capture that timeless tale of underdog stories, bullying, finding your confidence, but also for older generations, this story about people that are lonely and lacking purpose, and they have something to offer the world, but they don't know where that is. and then they deliver that. And I thought that was really special. Just what they're able to do with that. So anyway, that's kind of my initial reaction. I think my internet is being awful today. I want to apologize for that. I've done
fine. I think
everything in my power
to me as well.
Okay, as long as it's not just me. I'm looking at the stream and mine doesn't look great. It's so frustrating. I literally got a new router, upgraded my internet service, switched cameras, to do everything in my power to try and make it go better. And I rebooted my router and everything to make everything as good as possible. And just Central Texas internet, apparently awful.
Don't worry, it happens. I don't know if it's a regional thing or it's just the time it just decides to do it. Because for me, I've had interviews with people on here, and like I rewatched just to see if the connection was good, and I'm like pixelated and all over the place, and I'm like, how did they hear me when I was like talking to them? I was kind of like, I was pretty lucky we ended up doing that. But like from what you were saying, I love the generational aspect of the show. You know, being able to, like, yeah, you can sit with your kid and watch this show. There's not many shows you can do that with,
right?
And, you know, it's amazing to see how this show has also connected the younger audience to the Karate Kid movies, because there's so many that still haven't watched the films, and there's people that just straight up watch Cobra Kai first. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm more intrigued by Daniel and Johnny. Let me look at those films. But like, it's very amazing how the creators have, you know, John Hayden and Josh have brought this back and retold it in a way that would work, because you've probably heard some of the things Ralph was saying recently in his biography, some of the ideas that he was pitched for bringing back these characters. I mean, some of them are so ridiculous. Like, you will have a laugh, Sean, if you hear some of these. Like, one of them was, it sounded so cartoony. Someone pitched Ralph the idea of bringing back Mr. Miyagi as a ghost and to guide Daniel. Like, could you imagine that if that was a series? Like, just imagine that compared to what we get now. Like, it just wouldn't have been the same.
That's when you hear these ones where just try to imagine the person that's sitting there. I got a meeting where I get to sit down with Ralph Macchio. And you're just kind of come up with the best ideas. Like, you're actually going to sit down with the Karate Kid. You're writing down your ideas. And that's the one you decide to actually say to him. How crazy is that? That you think, like, I think I might win him over with Ghost Mr. Miyagi.
It's actually... it's like something you might have thought of, like, I don't know, having a dream. You're like, oh, this idea will get Ralph. But no, that's not an idea you bring to a pitch. I think that's an idea you might have a laugh with friends. Right. We'll bring up as a silly joke on here. Like,
right.
There was no, like, sort of... There's nothing interesting about that. Like, seeing Ralph and Pat coming back, of course, but, you know, just not having the Miyagi character all of a sudden, which was one of the main unique selling points of the Karate Kid, it's silly. I mean, Cobra Kai has been immensely successful without Mr. Miyagi, but they still keep him in the story respectfully, and they do it in such a effective way.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you think it's one of those ideas from someone that it's such a superficial idea. Like, what do people love about this? Oh, it's that relationship between Daniel and Mr. Miyagi, so he comes back as a ghost. And so it's superficially, it delivers the thing that people know and recognize. But as soon as you step back, you go, right, but the reason that relationship mattered is because it was grounded in reality. Like, sure, I mean, it's this exaggerated version about, like, bands of karate roaming the valley in California. You know, of course, is this realistic? Not really. Like, you know, the idea that in the mid '80s, the coolest kids in school all went to the same karate dojo, and, like, I mean, there's a silly side to all of it, but it was in reality that the reason it was relatable and is still relatable, and the reason that Cobra Kai worked is that it's just this timeless tale about experiences that everyone has in some way during grade school. And then you go, no. It's just about these two people. So it doesn't matter that guy's dead. Let's bring him back. And even like the side to that of like, I don't even know when they're pitching this idea, but I'm assuming it was after Pat Morita died, in which case you go, that's just gross. That's a gross idea. Like, it's not honoring of the character. It's just superficially using him as like, hey, one more scene with him. And you go, these ideas. Contrast that with when you watch Cobra Kai and he's not there. And they're not, and maybe they'll reach a point where they find a moment where it's justified to do a CGI Mr. Miyagi or something like that. And I don't know how I'll feel if when that ever did happen, but they haven't needed to. And you have a show that has a character that's never appeared other than leftover footage from Karate Kid, and he's present throughout the whole thing. He's this dominant character for huge chunks of the show without needing to be there, because the writers and creators understood the character. They understood his relationship to Daniel and this world of karate that's been created, in which case they're able to write him into scenes without him being there because he's touched so many lives. Dumb writers, however, can't do that because they don't understand material. So like, he's a ghost. He just shows up and he's walking around. He's a ghost.
Right.
Great pitch. Wow. You're a paid writer.
I don't know what they were smoking, but there was another idea that this was Ralph with John Avildsen, who did the Rocky film, and also obviously did the Karate Kid. And there was other studio execs with them, and someone else pitched this idea of doing a Rocky and Karate Kid crossover with Daniel LaRusso and Rocky Balboa both having like their own sons being pretty problematic. They both meet each other and basically have like a Miyagi-Mickey kind of style of training to sort of sort out their sons, which already sounds very contrived. And I like the idea of, New Jersey, Philadelphia kind of coming together for that, but like is really trying to sell too much here, and it doesn't really come across organically. It's like how would they...
Yeah, it doesn't. It's it's a concept that doesn't serve the story or the characters. It's a concept that feels entirely like fan service, and that's the way to phrase it. Like, it's where fan service goes wrong. Like serving the fans, that's not a bad thing. Having these ideas that it's like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if it's not a bad thing if it feels like it makes sense with the characters and the story that's being told. But I mean, even play it out, like, why would like how does this come about? Like in real life, Stallone is 15 years older than Ralph Macchio, but they're character-wise, it's a 20-year age gap. Why would they have kids the same age? Why would a heavyweight champion be anywhere hanging around? Like, it just doesn't add up. Like, it doesn't ring true. So it feels like a concept that's like, okay, we got two huge franchises that are getting diminishing returns here in the year 1990. Put them together. Novelty. Is it a good idea? Does it actually serve the characters? Does it serve the story? No, it does not.
Hell no. Like, it might sound cool on paper to see that, but it's just one of those things. It doesn't work. It's like, I don't know if you watch basketball, but it's like the Brooklyn Nets. You got these big names, but there's no chemistry. There's no, it's the intangibles aren't there. I think that's what Cobra Kai has been so effective with, is like, like you were saying earlier on, the different aspects you can get out of it, the characters. The creators were big fans of this show, and it's really about passion and storytelling through that. And these characters, they live different arcs, and we get to see very interesting spins on that. What are your favorite characters from Cobra Kai? Because there's so many. It's so much more than
Yeah.
what the original Karate Kid had, with Daniel pretty much being the main guy, and of course Miyagi, and you had these other characters, but Johnny wasn't loved. But obviously, what we see in Cobra Kai is amazing. Everyone loves him now. But yeah, which characters did you like in the show?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, one of the things the show does so well is create all of these tensions where usually there's not a clear good guy and bad guy. Really, until you maybe in seasons 3 and 4, Tori's presented as just a villain, and then season 3 in particular, she's very much presented as just a villain. Terry Silver in season 5, he's clearly just a villain. But even in those, they never let anyone sit there. There's always more to it. There's always some thought with the character that you go, that makes sense. There's a perspective there to where they're the hero of their own story. They're justified in their actions. But usually, we're on the internet debating who's right. And they kind of like, Sam's the worst. Well, I'm on Team Robby. I'm on Team Miguel. Like, they're doing all that stuff. And some of that's, it's a show that appeals to high schoolers, and high schoolers love to ship people, or whatever the phrase is. I'm too old to understand how to use that phrase properly. But there's all these different sides to everything. And I think that's what it does really well. So, I mean, I think Johnny's always been my favorite.
I love Johnny.
I'm old enough that I can resonate with his journey much more than the high schoolers now, and old enough to have regrets. And then I love that they allow him to be so politically incorrect and have this like subtle, very ignorant racism without it portraying him as just this lunatic, crazy man that needs it's like he's just ignorant. He's says these horrible things to Miguel in the first few episodes, but he also loves the guy, and it allows him to be flawed, and it allows him to be human, and it grows and he changes and he fixes things. But I love that it allows those things to take place, and then I love Miguel as well, who is our new karate kid, our new bullied kid that finds confidence. And that they really kind of take him on this journey that, we've reached a point in time where he's on multiple occasions been like, I'm not really interested in karate anymore. I've moved past that. I'm not that I'm moved past the people, but I've this tournament, it doesn't mean to me what it meant to me before. I've lost my way in this. And they allowed him to have that journey. And Tori is a character I hated in seasons 2 and 3. You can see my videos I put out, character rankings. She's bottom 3. I hated her. And then season 4, they actually found season 3 tried to do some stuff where they tried to give her some, make her seem more sympathetic. When they first started doing stuff, it's like the landlord's hitting on her, so that's why she's a jerk. And her mom's sick. Is like, you have to do a little bit more than that. You have to give her more nuance than that. And so then they did stuff in season 4 and brought Amanda in to actually give her an arc and give us a different perspective to where she's not really softening. I want to win. That you much were able to see where she was coming from and feel bad for her. And you actually get to the end of season 4 and she wins. And it's a person that's had this terrible life where everything sucks for her. And she finally gains something that she's proud of herself for accomplishing something. And she did it right. And she realizes immediately afterwards, wait a minute, he cheated for me to win. I didn't really win. I don't feel like I won anymore. And so then she won, but because of the way it went down, because of this worldview of Cobra Kai that she's in, it win at any cost, they take it away. And suddenly an action of Terry Silver makes her so much more compelling. And it's takes this character I hated, and suddenly she's really interesting. That's one of the things I really appreciate about the show, that they're able to do that. Take a character that I think this is a terrible character. And now she's one of my favorites.
Right.
As not a favorite character, but a character that I'm probably more fond of than most, I really like Amanda. Because she's the voice of reason. Exactly. And you have this show where you have these two grown men, And, the show plays them like they're in their 40s, but they're obviously, Ralph Macchio's 60. Today's Zabka's birthday. He turns 57 today. They're actually late 50s throughout the whole runtime until one of them's in his 60s. And they're acting so petty, and they're still reworking their high school rivalries, which I literally was at my 22-year high school reunion a month ago.
I remember we were talking about this.
Why was it my 22-year high school reunion? Because nobody wanted to meet up 2 years ago for some reason. So 22-year high school reunion, and it's nothing like Cobra Kai. You move past all of that stuff. You're a weirdo if you're still wound up on your high school bully when you're all these decades later. But it's great TV. But they put a character on the show that's calling it out. And so I love that. And she's even keeled. She gives her husband freedom, but also sometimes has you're being a terrible husband. You're being we have a business we're running. What are you doing? Not showing up to work to teach kids karate to stick it to your high school bully. What are you doing, man? Right. It's really entertaining to watch, but you need to have someone in the show that's the voice reason. So I've always been a big fan of her, and I've actually really enjoyed the Sam arc too. She's kind of not great in the first season. She's a spoiled kid. And then you feel bad for her that she kind of gets stuck as the kid that was hanging out with the awful spoiled kids, but isn't actually awful. She's not actually, she herself is rich, but she's not a spoiled person. And then I loved in season 4 when she's getting trained by Johnny, and she's kind of rebelling against her dad because she's siding with Johnny, and she's not doing anything wrong. She's in the right. And so I've actually really liked Sam too. So anyway, that's all the whole cast of the show, except
one of my mates,
except Lapusso and Kyler. They're the worst.
Lapusso. Oh my god,
those guys.
It's funny. When you were saying about Sam, my friend RJ here, he hates the hate that Sam gets. But the thing is, season 1. Season 2, she was quite annoying. I had problems with Dimitri in season 1.
Oh yeah. Oh, he was insufferable. The scene where he goes in and he's touching Kreese's tattoos. That is it's one of those just okay. Kreese is an awful person, but he's an awful person because he has PTSD from a war 50 years ago, and this entitled rich kid comes in. And he is talking to a guy, as an audience, we know he's awful. But he's talking to a war hero.
Right.
And he's walking up to someone and touching them and correcting their tattoo. And he gets punched in the face. And I don't encourage 70-year-old men to punch wienery kids in the face. But I'll make an exception in that case. He was insufferable. So whiny. And the only reason you're okay with you get to the finale of season 2, right, and Hawk is becoming such a douchebag that you actually Dimitri getting a good kick in. You're Hawk needed that coming.
He did,
but you appreciate it because it's coming from the wieneriest kid on the show.
Yeah.
But then you get to at the end of season 4, and Dimitri's winning rounds. And you're rooting for him, and you have these moments where you pause and go, the wieneriest kid, I'm actually rooting for him to win fights because he's actually doing the work, and I'm actually okay with the fact that the hot girl at school is into him because he's won me over too, so I get it. How is he able to win her over? He actually won me over with this journey that he's been on. You go,
exactly.
That worked. And that's, once again, the brilliance of the show. What makes the show so cool is that they'll take, you can go back, you can watch my videos from 3 years ago. Tori sucks. Dimitri sucks. Watch my current videos. They corrected. They moved them along. They saw the stuff and they found that's the fact that they suck and they're annoying. That's an opportunity for a character arc.
That's it. I just find it amazing. Dimitri is probably one of the characters that for me is, as soon as season 3 came.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I cut you off. I'm sorry. I went on my rant.
Oh no, you're cool. You're cool. Season 3, he just immediately became likable. I'm Where was this stuff?
Yeah.
And I mean that's the thing with the show, the opportunity to give people that like change of heart with a character. Like like Yasmin, like she was very annoying in season 1. Your typical spoiled, popular girl from like school, and then she gets humbled by Aisha, who again is a very good character. And then I was kind of disappointed with her in season 5. I felt like she was kind of returning to that season 1 character. It's only a minor thing, but yeah, like I think that's
Well,
the thing
there
about...
wasn't as much focus on the high schoolers themselves being high schoolers. So then when you only have a few moments of her doing her thing, then you only get that. And
right.
and
like,
that's
it's a little bit of a nitpick from me, but like, yeah, I think there was more focus on the adults this season, and I know that's something you definitely touched on in your review. Like
which ironically, I like the adults more than the kids on the show because I'm adult, so I just resonate with them. You know, I grew up. I remember growing up and going. I just said I grew up a bunch of times in case you guys didn't know that. I did grow up. But when I was growing up, I literally grew up, and we go to the library, and I remember in like 1991 checking out the Karate Kid 3 soundtrack from the library. Which why I don't know, but at the Karate Kids are like that's how much is like my childhood is. I don't remember ever watching them the first time because I was always watching them. I saw the next Karate Kid in the theater, so the adults I just resonate with more. It's funny that you get to season 5 and the focus on the adults and the sidelining of Hawk and a lot of those characters bugged me because it's the balance. It's the part. What's interesting about the show to me isn't the adults fighting the adults so much is the complexity of adults that really do care about the kids,
right?
And their different perspectives on that. And so then when it comes like we got to stop Terry and through espionage, it's not quite the same thing. I like the mentoring, so the kids are just as much of an important part to it.
Right. I think with the thing with Cobra Kai, I realize there's sometimes like there's more of a focus on the younger characters in one season, and then the following season there's a bit more adult. Because with season 3, I think it tried to go a bit more adult, but then it was getting darker. But then the younger characters were maturing. Like season 5 was definitely the darkest season yet, and just what you said, that's funny. Like just seeing how I could see the adults were kind of prioritized a little bit more in season 5, but I think I like because the season 4, the whole tournament, it was more of a focus on the young characters, and that was more important for that season. And season 5 kind of, I think there is a little bit more of the adults.
The target for season 4 was the tournament, which is the teenagers, so the target was more obviously related to them. You get to season 5 and the target is Terry, an adult,
right? And
so you think that the target shifts what you can do with the story and how balanced it can be. And I literally had that thought of like, that's what kind of what that was.
I think with Terry Silver it would have been very hard to sort of make the kids more of a thing with Silver because it's Daniel's villain, it's his OG Karate Kid villain, and I think I do kind of like the moments we got. Or I say kind of, but I love the moments we got with Silver. We have to talk about that. This is kind of touching upon the whole reason why Cobra Kai was successful as well. How they've been able to bring back previous characters from the franchise's history and doing
almost everybody.
Right.
Hilary Swank, where are you?
We got to see Hilary. She's been asked about it a lot, and I think recently she was speaking about it as she was promoting her new
TV show
she was in. And she was saying that's a conversation for another time. We don't know. I mean, I'm sure she's had a conversation with the creators. I'm sure they've said, we'd like to bring you back. I mean, with Thomas, I think back in 2019 they'd got in touch with him to return.
I think that's the tricky thing when you have these ones of like Thomas Ian Griffith, Mike, Sean Kanan, Caitlin, it's something like that. Sean's are all the same to me. Not
Just call him Sean.
cheap knockoffs of me.
Cheap knockoff.
They've had work. Hilary Swank has had a better career than Ralph Macchio. In certain ways. He's more iconic of an actor. She's got Oscars. And when you're
exactly.
and you kind of go, and then you have the problem of she's in the one that people didn't like.
Right.
And that's tough. I think that's really tough to, if you're Thomas Ian Griffith, you're in one of the less beloved movies, but it's still the thing that you're most famous for.
Right.
And he's in it. Vampires is the villain, and he's had other things, but the thing he's most famous for, that thing Hilary Swank is most famous for, is winning an Oscar. And she's not someone that's done a lot of like just cheap blockbusters. She's not someone that's had, and I think that's probably a pretty hard sell to go back to the thing that maybe is a little bit of an embarrassment. And it's interesting because the perspective of where we would be at, my perspective is Cobra Kai has made Karate Kid 3 better. It's made Karate Kid 2 better. It's a great compliment to the original that's already pretty much a perfect movie in my mind. And so it can only make that film better. It makes the Julie character more interesting. And to the fans, it's a gift to see Mr. Miyagi's two students finally interact. And what does that look like? Like there's something really, really special there. That how it ties into the story, I don't know, but there's 1,000 ways it could tie into the story. Especially with, we'll get to this in a little bit, but when you're talking about probably a world tournament in the next season, there's a reason why someone would show up and be that, like, there's so many ways you could do it, but would she want to? And
that's the question.
Yeah, that's the so anyway, I don't remember how I went down that rabbit trail.
I mean, you said you saw the next Karate Kid in the cinema, so like,
yeah.
what was your reaction to that? Because I mean, the film itself got a lot of stick, but did you like the film when you saw it, or were you kind of like, okay,
the first
the
movie
idea was interesting, but
and I don't think it was ever great. It wasn't that, but
it was bland.
I mean, the first movie I remember watching in the theater and being like, oh no, was Batman and Robin, which was like 4 or 5 years ago.
I got a few friends that didn't like that either.
And that was there's a lot of movies I saw that I was like, that was cool, and then grew up and was like, that was not cool. Batman and Robin was the first one where I was like, why is Batman ice skating? So I saw the next Karate Kid in theaters, and I enjoyed it enough. And I watched it on cable. I might have had it on VHS. I was always cool with it. And still to this day, all the Karate Kid movies are entirely watchable for me. Some of them, it's childhood nostalgia, so it's just easy to put the movie on. Other thing, it's a movie that, like all of these films, are deceptively well cast in certain ways. You think Karate Kid 3, it's Blake Lively's sister is the love interest. It's Blake Lively's sister, when Blake Lively was 3 years old or whatever. Which also was wildly inappropriate because she was 17 and Ralph Macchio was like 30 years old. Whoops.
Yeah.
But then you get into Next Karate Kid. Obviously, Hilary Swank, world-class actress, it was the person that they cast. And if you watch the movie, she's also a better natural athlete than Ralph Macchio. Is more believable and like very like flexible in doing these kicks that Ralph Macchio never did. Some of those kicks.
Yeah, I remember that kick she did against Ned. Like she had a leg all the way.
Yeah, there's a shot. She throws her leg up, holds her leg to cock her leg. Boom! And kicks up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like you see that and you go, "Whoa, that wouldn't feel good." But then Walton Goggins is one of the guys in the gang and stuff like that. And then Michael Ironside is the villain. Yeah. But like whenever I realized, like, what's Walton Goggins? This guy's been one of the premier character actors of the last 20 years. Like he's been, got back to Jackie Chan. He's in Shanghai Nights, Noon. It's the first one, Shanghai Noon, as one of the bad guys in it. And he's one of the guys in Ned's gang in that. And I think it has more to offer than people give it credit for. It has monks going bowling too.
I find that
it is
funny.
some things. But man, wouldn't it be great if they could get her? What a gift.
I think there's so much to. I'm sure there's an appealing factor for Hillary to kind of go. Maybe not in the at the time, after maybe 10 years after that movie, like, oh, I have unfinished business with, that Julie character. But with the revival of the franchise and how well it's gone with Cobra Kai, and she's probably seen how they've brought back Terry Silver, how they brought back the OG villains, and sort of how can they bring her back now? And she probably will give them that chance to pitch her the idea. I mean, I'm sure, like, there's got to be an appeal. Yeah. And I think with Julie, you can do so much, especially now they've introduced the first female Cobra Kai sensei with Kim Dae-un. So, people want to see her fight Julie, and, the first Miyagi-Do female sensei. We got to see that. It would be amazing if they could do that.
There's so many things we could just spitball of, like, ways that they could do it with the scenarios that have been set up. Right. And some of it is to say that it doesn't even need to be all that complex. Like, you have Elizabeth Shue show up for one episode, and it's just Johnny having a fun time with his ex-girlfriend that's the girl he's been hung up on, that makes him realize that was awesome, but all I really want to do is get back to Carmen. But you get all the reflections backward, and you think you have an episode in the middle of the season where they're about to go represent Miyagi-Do at the world stage or something, and Julie just wants to show up to, like, just kind of give him a pep talk or something like that, or just want, like, something simple. You can just have a simple episode of these two people that were mentored at the time for very different reasons and in different ways, needed Mr. Miyagi in their life, and just them sitting there reflecting on him. Back to what we talked about before, about so much of what the show does well is having so much Miyagi throughout the whole show without him ever being there. And just think of the conversations that they would have they almost certainly would have met at Mr. Miyagi's funeral, even if that's the first time they met.
Yes.
But of course there would be a reason that they would have interacted. So there's just so much you could do, even if it's simple. And then there's the wild, crazy stuff about, like, what if she really got involved? What if they could really get her to commit?
I mean, it would be cool to see her sort of have a history with a character that's just been introduced. Like, there's theories about her maybe having competed against Sensei Kim when, she was younger, and there's so many years. There's like a 25-year gap in between that film and when Cobra Kai is set. So, there's so much you could talk about in that time. It's like how they addressed Mike Barnes. What was he doing in that time? They did that simply in the third episode. Terry Silver, he obviously explained to Kreese why he left Cobra Kai with, him trying to get back his business, because, he lost about half of what he had, and then he got back to his ways and obviously tried to sort out his PTSD, which was very admirable. But, like, with Julie, I think there's a big opportunity there. I think, like you said, it can be something simple, or she could really help Daniel with the tournament, or she could just, bring characters together, like, because she's got that Tori-esque feature with what she was going with her arc in the film, and she can also relate to Sam, so she could sort of bring those two together in a sense.
Exactly. I mean, just even as you're saying that, it's like that's what I'm talking about. One of the things that Cobra Kai does so well is make some of the less than perfect parts of the Karate Kid franchise better. You should immediately think about that, of, like, there's the arc that they used for Julie 30 years ago in a movie that wasn't well received has been better received in things that they've done in Cobra Kai.
Right.
But that also makes for an opportunity to take this character and you put her in Tori's life. And immediately that's interesting and compelling. There's something to that. You immediately go, yeah, right. Who's someone that could relate, that would have the skill set that isn't, okay, yeah. And all of a sudden, Julie has all these extra layers to her. And you don't have to do a ton for it to have a lot of baggage to it. You mentioned the Mike Barnes conversation. it didn't need to say a lot to communicate a lot. You have Mike Barnes say, I've so many times wanted to go and apologize, but time had passed and I just didn't want to trigger something from the past. That's a very mature adult. Like, those are the thoughts that adults very frequently have when you're old enough and you realize, I am so sorry for this thing I did in the past. I wish I hadn't done this. But if I bring it up now, all I'm doing is hurting someone again. I'm opening an old wound. And so if I ever get the opportunity, I would love to be able to say I'm sorry. But like, that's so profound without needing a lot of words, without needing to over-explain it. And you can do that with Julie.
Right. I like the idea of Julie having already met Daniel at that funeral, or the idea of maybe Daniel learned the will technique with her.
What if he? I'm just spitballing this. Guys, you could do a flashback scene. Like, what if as they're like moving into this, you do like there's so many little things that you could do of like, I don't know. That's a thought that I had of like, I would love to see that. And that Mr. Miyagi didn't die all that long before the show started. You could do that. I know. Yeah. Anyway, sorry,
that
cut
is
you
a
off.
very no, that's cool. That's a very interesting opportunity for them with Julie, and I think that's the one character right now that they haven't brought back that I feel you can do a lot with. I don't know about Dugan and some of the other characters. Maybe they can appear, but I feel Julie is definitely the character you got to bring back. And Cobra Kai has kind of created its own villains now going forward. Sensei Kim. Who does she know that we don't know? Like, it's original villains coming in now. So, Julie coming in, it's the last of the legacy characters, if you like, that you want to bring in. But yeah, Cobra Kai is still impressing. It's being able to continue with what it has, and it's trying to do something new. The younger characters like Miguel, Robby, Sam, Tori, and how they're passing on their teachings to the younger characters like Lapuso, Devon, and Kenny. That new trio. One thing I have to ask you is, what do you expect for season 6? Now we've got like a tournament coming, even if it isn't the season of the tournament and it ends up being season 7. Like, what are you expecting or hoping for next season?
Some of it I'm not sure of. Like, we have Kreese break out of prison the day that he would have been cleared and released anyway, which I thought was an odd writing choice the way that played out. But Kreese breaking out of prison, I don't know where that's going. I don't know how that makes any sense. Like, there's some of the stuff that kind of bugged me about the season where it's just you want to do something big and shocking, so they escalated to such a level where we go, where's this going? Wait, he broke out of prison? Like, what? So there's gonna be like gigantic manhunt looking for him?
Yeah,
because it'll be all over the news. Like, Vietnam vet fakes his own death to break out of prison. Like, that's quite the news story. So everyone's looking for, like, I don't know where that's going at all. The season set up World Tournament. And if that's not where it's headed, what a very weird little rabbit trail to go on for an episode. But seems like they're heading on that level of like, okay, we've put our differences aside. We're coming together. We have to come up with a name. Judge guy that likes Rocky IV likes Johnny. All right, cool. So it seems that's where we're headed. We set up kind of some new villain characters that can carry on, that would be at this global stage as well, that equally they want to have this more aggressive version of karate be the face of karate for the world. So we go the global scale. So you have, but I don't know what that season looks like. And this is what I kind of said at the end of season 3. I could see the end of the show, a very natural, organic conclusion with season 4, which is Johnny and Daniel have had their differences, and then all these different things keep pulling them apart, and then you get to a point in time where they have the shared enemy and they realize what the real problem is. They come together, defeat Cobra Kai once and for all. The show ends. Kids find their confidence. Grown-ups mend their relationships. We're done.
right.
But they decided to go in that direction, and they kind of obviously season 4 didn't end there. Season 5 sets up this grander, bigger scale. So I don't have an image in my mind of where that's headed, which is kind of exciting because it's unpredictable. But it also makes you go, does that mean we're going to jump the shark? Are we going to go too far? Does it feel like we're going to lose what made the original stuff special, which was certain rivalries, high school competitiveness, that timeless tale, and now it gets so big, we go full blown Mighty Ducks 2 and we're winning the Olympics. You go, what just happened here? Like what? Like I get that, you can learn karate and gain confidence, but you don't learn karate in 3 months and then win the world tournaments. So you gotta go.
That's definitely a difficult one to address, because from what they've set up with, Sensei Kim's senseis, they've been training their whole life with, that style.
Right.
Surely the younger students there that she has, that's the same thing. They've been learning it from day one. There's also, the Valley is just one part of the world. Like, there's going to be bigger and better fighters out there.
Right.
So how are they going to be able to be as good as those guys? They already have, winners in that tournament that are probably going to make Robby, Miguel, Sam, and Tori look like rookies. So how do they go about that? Is there going to be some cheating, maybe? Do they have to do something they don't want to because there's no other choice?
Yeah.
The stakes are so big. It's definitely a difficult one to address.
And that's the stuff that makes me nervous. Like, if you want to sell me on, sure, the kids that have 3 months of karate training are able to beat up the kids with 0 karate training. Sure, that fits in our formula. And, the classic explanation in the original Karate Kid is that Mr. Miyagi got him really good at the fundamentals. And so he's fighting people that are trying to do all this fancy stuff when just really know the fundamentals. You're not aggressive. And these guys are getting defeated because they're being too aggressive. And so there's even a logic to why Daniel was able to beat people with more training than him and a better mindset. He had and all this. But when you get to a certain point in time of like, no, you literally have people that have been training in the timeline of the show for under 2 years, right at 2 years. The one with the most training is 2 years of training, and also to take time off for a broken back. Right. Little bit of a setback versus people that have been training for 15 years since they were 4 or whatever.
It is a difficult one. I think,
and keep in mind, Daniel and Johnny are not actually world-class trainers. They're just kids that learned karate in the Valley in the 80s for a little bit, didn't train for decades, and okay, I don't want to overthink it. I'm all about suspending disbelief, but if you take your show and go, let's take it to the next level, you're making me have to think about things too much. And do I actually believe that Daniel is a world-class karate trainer, or Johnny, who doesn't seem like he's training karate in 35 years? Come on, I'm thinking about it, which makes me go, that doesn't add up. So I've been nervous about all of these recent seasons because of the same thing I said at the end of season 3. It felt like that was the natural end. TV shows have a tendency to go on too long, and at some point in time, you run out of reasonable storylines, so you start doing crazy stuff.
How many seasons do you think Cobra Kai should have, based on what we've seen so far with 5 seasons? Because I feel, next season they could set up the tournament, and then 7 is the final season with the tournament. That sounds like you have enough time to finish arcs and then set up things for the spin-off, or the multiple spin-offs, or whatever their plan is. But there's also that, like you said, that idea, like Walking Dead has had that issue where it probably should have ended like with season 7 or 8, maybe even before that, and it's still going on. And I know they're finishing it now soon, but it's toilet trash now. It used to be
just ran
amazing.
Everybody off.
Yeah. So what do you think should be, or how do you feel it should end with how many seasons?
I think the problem with all of these questions for me is that, for me, they've already moved past what I can envision for the show.
Right.
They've moved past what felt to me would be like, right there. Okay, gotcha. That's good. And so if we're not there anymore, if we've already flown over that landing, I don't know what the next landing is. And it's tricky in another sense because they've resolved the things that I wanted them to resolve at the point I wanted them to resolve them. So they're not, Johnny and Robby, we're good. Robby, Miguel, we're good. Johnny has grown up a little bit. He's become stable. So all these things that were set up in the first season, we have resolved it. And in a sense, we've defeated Cobra Kai. So what is the next season? Like, what is the show when all the conflicts that we've enjoyed up to this point in time? Tori's not a villain anymore. And kind of everyone's coming together. So if you've resolved all of that, what is the show? What is the conflict? What's the arc? What's the journey? How do we continue that underdog aspect? How do we continue to have these mentoring relationships? I don't have a vision for that. I can't see what that looks like. And I really don't have a feel for it. And so, in my mind, they should have ended with season 4 with my ending. In my mind. But also, in my mind, Cobra Kai was a terrible idea for a show in the first place. So, my mind is limited. The box of what I can envision is not as big as what they can envision. And they came up with the whole concept of the show with each of these characters that they made me love. So, I don't have when you ask me the question of where do I think they should end, I don't know because they've I can't see it at the moment. For a long answer to say I don't know, the longest way to say it, I don't know that I can think of.
It's different. It's a hard one because a lot of people were worried, like the way season 5 ended. They felt it was like an ending, which it kind of
it was.
It felt like it.
If the show ended right there, outside of the crease cliffhanger, that could be satisfying. That could be the end, and you go like, okay, like yeah, Cobra Kai's been defeated, and people are friends. That it could work. Anyway, I cut you off, but agree.
Like I feel like the main thing they could do is just maybe explore the friendships and sort of understanding that the valley is just one. They're in one region. There's the whole world out there. There's a bigger scale to karate, and maybe it's sort of, the egos could kind of come with these characters. Now they're all together. They think, oh, nothing's gonna stop us. Like, in terms of our karate, we're like all like trained together now. So like, are they gonna be humbled by what happens in the next tournament or preparation? When they meet Sensei Kim's students, like how are they gonna react to that? Because I feel like they could. I personally think 2 more seasons, if that. Yeah. But I think any more might go down that. I don't want this show to become The Walking Dead. Like the way they've just milked it. AMC just disrespected how great the first 5 seasons were, and it's just kind of
before the final season even airs, they tell us, "Hey, we're gonna do a spinoff with these 2 characters." So that means they don't die. Your whole show is built around who's gonna die, and you just told us these 2 people won't die, and it probably would have leaked. It probably would have gotten out eventually, but you didn't have to do that. It's a weird sense of like it's a spoiler to say someone doesn't die, but in that show it absolutely is a spoiler.
And I think it's amazing we do have a show like Cobra Kai around because it's not like any other show. It's really unique, and I think that's why I'm so into it. And I think I have faith in the creators, so I think things will be more interesting with the way they can go about it with this global tournament. But it's always one of those things. You just hope it gets better. It doesn't get worse or declines. But I think every show, no matter how great it is from 5-6 seasons in, the start is always going to be the strongest. Especially like when you have a season 1 like Cobra Kai did, and just how much impact it had, how simple but effective it was. Keeping simplicity and that effectiveness from the simplicity is so important, even if the story is getting a bit more chaotic and deeper, and there's more characters involved, because Cobra Kai is just expanding, and it's a 30-minute show.
Yeah.
So how can they keep that up? They're gonna have to change something. That's another thing I've felt about with the runtime. But do you think after 5 seasons, do you think Cobra Kai is in the top 5 or 10 in terms of the best shows of all time? Would you put it in that region?
I don't know. Those are always tough lists to make, because when I think about top of all time, I think what are the ones that have meant the most to me, that have kind of stood the test of time.
Right.
But I throw something like Star Trek: The Next Generation in there. But if you go back and rewatch Star Trek: The Next Generation, first season is terrible. Everyone admits like, oh, it's one of the best sci-fi shows of all time. First season is terrible. And so it's odd the way that we sometimes treat our favorites, and television as television as a whole has gotten dramatically better over the last 20 years than it was before. It was because the mechanism for distribution has changed, where prior to the turn of the century, you only watched television whenever it aired on broadcast. You didn't have DVD sets. Sometimes they would put out VHS sets, but it was very expensive. Nobody had them. And so you had to just watch it when they aired. So all television was episodic. And so they always had these formulas for how they would do it. Seasons were all 24 episodes, 27 episodes long, because they all had a formula for how they did it. And then turn of the century, DVD sets came out, and all of a sudden there was a way that you could watch the whole season and start at the beginning. And you started doing shorter seasons with shows like The Shield and premium television with HBO. They started doing it like, let's actually write like a great season, as opposed to just following these formulas. And
Right.
it changed everything. And then, of course, around 2010, you start having Netflix come around in these streaming services, to where the whole model changed. So it's a little bit tough, because there's so many things to factor into that. Of shows that I just find incredibly rewatchable, Cobra Kai is way up there.
Right.
There's not many shows that I rewatch as much as Cobra Kai, especially with what I do for a living, all the stuff that I have to rewatch. And every time I start at the beginning, I'm like, oh, let's keep going. And as I said at the beginning of this, my 8-year-old is playing that same game with me. Like, let's start over. Let's start watching through it again. And keep in mind, I watched through all of it in December. So that means in the last year, I've watched through all of it 3 times. I've watched season 4 times in the last year, because I watched it twice when it dropped, and then I guess that doesn't happen. Watched it 3 times in the last year, and I'd be fine to watch it again. There's not many shows that are that rewatchable, especially from the whole. Just so bingeable. It's a show that is so designed for the current distribution model that
Right.
you just throw it on and just consume. Like, this is so good. Oh crap! It's 2 a.m. But man, that cliffhanger! I gotta watch another one. That's with this season. I was gonna watch it over 3 nights. We ended up just watching. We did it in 2 nights. It was like up until 2 a.m. both nights in a row. I think our kids were at their grandparents' or something. We just stayed up till 2, which we're old. We can't do that anymore. We just did it anyway. Had to. So
But
anyway,
that's,
that was a long rabbit trail in the history of television. But it's tough for me to give a definitive answer about my favorites of current running shows. Absolutely, most rewatchable. Absolutely, of all time. It takes a long time for you to crack into that list. But if I were to make a list of my favorite shows of all time, I don't know if it'd be in the main list, but it would certainly be in the runner-up list. It might be in the main list.
You brought up a really great point though about all of those are great points, but the thing about standing the test of time.
Thank you. I also felt that all of my points were good.
Just all the shows that we see that have been so successful, you do think, can it stand the test of time?
Yeah.
And the fact this show can bring something from 30 years ago, or more than 30 years ago, and maybe do better than what was originally trying to be achieved, I think that can stand the test of time too, because as things evolve and change, like you don't want the original being disrespected or ruined, right?
Yeah.
But if you can find a way that is so original and so respected, and it continues that in a way we haven't seen before, that stands a test of time for me. Like Top Gun Maverick,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of. I mean, I don't know how much you love that film
It's
compared to me,
garbage.
but
Worst movie of the year. That's easily my favorite of the year, wwithout question. I saw it 4 times in a week, and I saw it 3 nights in a row, which was an accident, but I was happy to do it. And then I got back. I was basically, I did the way it worked out, I did a trip where I was in Florida, then I was in Las Vegas, and then I was in California. So I literally went coast to coast across the United States in a week, going to these different conventions, kind of accidentally. And that was the week that Maverick came out. And so I got on the press list to see it in Las Vegas, but I also wanted to do a fan meetup. So I saw it 2 nights in a row in Las Vegas, and then I did a fan meetup in LA the next day. But my wife wasn't with me, and I knew it was her most anticipated. So as soon as I got back to town, I was like, "We got to go see Top Gun," and that one was fun because I'd already seen it 3 times. So I'm just watching the movie. As easily my favorite of the year. Anyway, I cut you off again.
No, that yeah, just that film it's so. I mean, if that's the Cobra Kai approach again, like I was saying, if you can pay respect to the original, but continue it in a way we're not expecting, because Maverick, I mean, I think, did you have the same sort of feeling like, oh, this might be a stretch, or did you have belief in it, knowing that Tom Cruise is playing a big role in making this film and sort of who was involved with it?
I mean, they've been talking about it for about 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was pretty nervous when they said stuff. But 10 years ago, Tom Cruise hadn't quite had his revival that he's had. About 2014, there started to be a pretty big shift. Obviously he went kind of cuckoo 15-ish years ago and was jumping on a couch like, I love Katie Holmes. And he was like debating Scientology with Matt Lauer. Like, you don't know the science. I know science. Like, well, Tom Cruise is letting his crazy out. So he kind of had a little bit of like, I don't know. And he's kind of in that transition phase. And then about 10 years ago with Ghost Protocol, he was like, wait, this guy makes really good movies. Wait, this guy dangled off a building? This guy's crazy. And then like did Edge of Tomorrow, and he started just only putting out really good movies. And so then by the time they put out the first trailer, and I saw that first trailer, I was never really worried about this film. It just felt like that I think they've tapped into exactly what we want. I think they just got it. And so it's a movie that Tom Cruise might be crazy as can be, might have a death wish, but he knows what his audience wants. And so when he plays into what they want, he delivers. He delivers. And man, I heard Top Gun Maverick was referred to as a Endgame for old people. It is 100% true. My wife's aunt was here in town this past weekend. That's all she wanted to talk about. The movie came out 6 months ago. She's like, "Did you see Top Gun?" I'm like, I review movies for a living. Of course I saw Top Gun. Also, Top Gun's the first movie I remember seeing. And so like that's all she wanted to talk about. The people that don't normally go to the movies are so excited about that film. It's so like, man, Tom Cruise is crazy, but he makes good movies. That's what everybody says.
It's a common thing. Would you say that's film of the year?
Yeah.
With Top Gun Maverick?
Yeah. At the moment, I wouldn't even say it's debatable. We'll see what Black Panther, Wakanda Forever does. I wouldn't think that Avatar 2 would dethrone it, but you can't count out James Cameron. But I don't know what they could do to top. For me personally, I don't know what they could do.
The pun.
I don't know what they could do to top Top Gun for me.
I mean, I'm a huge Marvel fan, so I was a bit disappointed with Thor: Love and Thunder and with Multiverse of Madness. I mean, Multiverse of Madness especially, I expected way better from that. I love the Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I got to see Black Adam the other day, and I thought that was pretty good as well.
Mm-hmm.
But Top Gun I do agree with you on that. I think it might be film of the year for me as well because it's just so refreshing how they did it, and it's just that there's not many. I didn't really have no negatives when I was thinking about the movie. Like, is there really any negatives?
I mean, I thought there's a little bit of a quick transition when it goes from Maverick is training them to Maverick is fired and taking over. It's when
oh yeah.
No, without wanting to say too much, there's a big event that happens with a character that creates a big shuffle with what's going on. For the two of you that haven't seen it, so I don't want to spoil it for you, but because I actually don't. If there's even two of you that haven't, I don't want to spoil it for you. But when there's that transition at that point in time, that felt quick. That it's a gigantic pivot for the movie. Whoa, what just happened there? And the bar scene is a little bit long. That's it. Everything else is perfect. It's amazing, and I think even when you say it's like refreshing, and it's refreshing because it feels like a movie that could have come out 25, 30 years ago, but it just has that timeless quality of just really good storytelling. It's such a crowd pleaser, so rewatchable. There's something in there for everyone, and it's not cynical. Where even Hangman, who you're like, this guy, he's a dick.
Yeah, Glenn Powell plays that really well.
Who went to my high school. I know people that know him.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's whenever he was in Expendables 10 years ago, the third one.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they did an early screening, and he was there. And they're like, yeah, he went to Westwood High School. I went to Westwood. It's like, that's cool. So he's like the guy that I'm always rooting for. And that's why I was so excited when he was cast in Top Gun. Like, that could be cool. Like, what if he's like a big part of this movie? What if this movie's really big? And he is. And like, he's an icon. Like, everybody knows Hangman. Everybody knows who that is. And it's a guy I went to high school with, and it's a guy that several mutual friends with. And obviously he's gone off and become a Hollywood guy. But as of when they did know him well, everyone says he's a cool guy. So, as best I could say, Glenn Powell's a cool guy. Anyway, in the movie, though, he's so good at playing this douchebag. But it's not a cynical movie. He's a douchebag because he wants to go and be a war hero. And so they let him be a hero. They let the antagonist, because he's not a bad guy. He's a jerk, overly aggressive, but they let him be the hero at the end. The guy that like you're rooting against, that you don't want to be picked. The movie's like, yeah, give him his moment. He gets to save the day, so he gets one more time where he gets to talk down to them like, hey, I saved you guys. I got one more kill. And that's a movie that lets you do that. And it doesn't feel any need to deconstruct heroes. It doesn't feel any need to do anything but entertain and just give you every moment that you want to have happen. And they're so good. And even when it gets cheesy, it's so good. I probably should get going soon. I think there's like a monster mash at my kid's school, and I've got a Black Adam movie review that, speaking of the internet that's been giving us trouble, so my video quality hasn't been good as I wanted. It also meant I wasn't able to get my Black Adam review uploaded in time because my internet just wasn't going as fast as good. So if you got one or two final questions in here, we can close out with it. You said you had some friends that had some questions they would have asked. There's been a couple in there, but I really should get going in just a few minutes. So
just
we can fire a few off.
We could take one. Strike First Media, my good friend Cody. He asked top 4 favorite fictional character. I do not know what happened there. I think my connection is getting weird. But yeah,
let me take over with the.
Wait,
all right, now that I am in charge of this channel, I am. It's just me here now.
My camera just randomly went off then, but like, yeah, I was just like, you know what? I'll just let Sean take over. But yeah, this is
here we go.
Question.
Top 4 favorite fictional characters. So Rocky Balboa is number 1. Ripley from Aliens is way up there. with what they've done on Cobra Kai, I think you throw Johnny and Daniel in there. I love when you have characters we get to see over a span of time and in different phases of life. That's
Right.
because you could actually see growth and change. That's even, we would talk briefly about Mike Barnes in here. That's what was so just nice about simple interactions that rang true of like someone in a different phase of life. When you're 50, you think very differently about the jerk you were in high school. And so then I think through these characters that we got to spend a lot of time with it. Yeah, I mean, I think Rocky Balboa is my number one. Just love that underdog story. As we've mentioned it here before, original Rocky as well as the wonderful Rocky V, directed by Avildsen, who did Karate Kid 1 and 3 as well. So I guess he's good at directing movies that create characters that are timeless and that I love. But then, yeah, those are ones that come to mind.
Some good ones. And I think the last question we'll take is, this is a great one. Favorite movie soundtrack or TV show soundtrack? That's a difficult one. I can only think of 5 ones that I can't pick, but I can think of. Yeah, that's difficult.
So soundtrack are the songs. Score is the music written for it. That's the language I'm using to answer this question. So a big one for me actually was Top Gun. My family had the soundtrack for Top Gun on vinyl. As I remember growing up.
Vinyls are great.
And back then, that's all we had. And back then, they sounded better than tapes. So we had like literally, not because we were being vintage, but that's just because all you had. we had the vinyl for Top Gun, and so that's one of those first ones I remember. And Top Gun was a movie I watched when I was young enough, and I was dumb enough. I thought that the way movies worked, that the star of the movie sang all the songs. So I thought that Danger Zone was sung by Tom Cruise. I just didn't know. Like when I guess the lady is singing "Take My Breath Away." Like I just didn't know. Like I literally thought that at the time. Rocky IV is a great one. That kind of comes to mind. There's an era where in late '90s, early zeros, all the comic book movies and horror movies, they would have all the hit bands write a new song for them. And that was my formative years of high school and right out of high school. So there's just all these soundtracks from that era, like Scream 3, whichever, that I had the soundtracks for them that you could play. Even like Daredevil, the Ben Affleck one that everyone craps on. It's worth a lot of criticisms. But that's like the song "Bring Me to Life" from Evanescence, which became this gigantic hit 18 years ago. It became a hit because it was in the trailer for Daredevil. And then there's a scene in the movie where Elektra's training and goes and beats everybody up. Now that it's my channel, we're going to talk about Evanescence that's what this is about. It's no longer about Cobra Kai. It's the Evanescence show. He's back. Gonna lose control.
Keeps happening. I'm sorry. I don't know what my webcam's doing. It just keeps letting me down.
The soundtrack for it has songs from Fuel, Hit Turn from Evanescence with 2 different songs that became massive hits. But it's a long answer. But
it was
Top
a good
Gun's
one.
the best because Tom Cruise and Kelly McGillis are great singers.
That's a new fact.
Now you know.
Funny. That's funny. Sean, thank you for so much for coming on. Honestly, it was really fun discussing Cobra Kai and just talking pop culture with you. It was so cool to nerd out and just talk about
and learning important facts about movie soundtracks. If you star in the movie, Tom Cruise sang the whole thing.
Oh, thank you so much for your time. I know you got to go, but yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. And like I said, I love your work. I enjoy it.
Thanks so much.
You always get to reviews and you move on to it. I just love that, the mannerism you have with that and just the approach you take. And I think that's great because some people dwell too much into things.
Yeah.
And, your approach is very real and just straight to the point, and I love that. So, yeah, I just want to say thank you for that.
And I try and talk the way I would talk to you in my reviews. What's actually normal people interested in. Try to, hopefully I can bring in a little bit more vocabulary of filmmaking and storytelling and then articulate either what my audience is feeling or help them understand people that had a different take on it. That's what I hope to be able to do.
Right. It works. I mean, I think it's great, speaking to a bigger audience in that way. So I love it. And as my friends would say, nuanced. You are nuanced.
Nuanced. I actually really love that. That's the word that he chose. I legitimately like nuanced. Like, I very much appreciate that I would be described as nuanced. It holds me back on Twitter because I can't. I'm not very good at Twitter because I don't want to write dunk tanks where everything's awesome, awful, or people that disagree they're stupid. I want to write nuanced takes, which holds me back on Twitter. But hopefully it means that I have something better to say about the things that I love. Or the things that I want to love that disappoint
me. Yeah. You'll never win with Twitter, though. That's one thing. There's always going to be somebody
It's true.
trying to come at you or is trying to, like, just be controversial with what you're saying, even if you're saying something that's a fact.
I've had a couple of those. That's been it. Well, I think that the most interesting ones is when people have come at me, attacking me with something like real specific. I feel this guy's like this. He's really like this. Then people that have met me in real life are like, I've been friends with him 20 years. That's not true. So said that recent to me, and then a guy that met me in Las Vegas. I actually spent a couple days with this guy in Las Vegas because we were at a YouTube convention. We just happened to be at it, both YouTubers, and so we just attended it together. And then we did that Top Gun Maverick screening I mentioned. I said I was going to be there, so we bought a ticket for it. Coincidentally, he bought the ticket next to me. It was like we sat down, and he literally goes, I didn't know. I didn't mean to do this. He literally was like, "It's cool, dude. That we're buddies." I didn't know. I'm not stalking you. So like someone like came at me, said stuff. Is like, so I met him in person, spent 2 days with him. You're wrong. He's none of the things you're describing him. That's Twitter. They just make up things, and it's always the most simplistic most simplistic explanation of why someone's behaving a specific way, the most simplistic description of why someone was whatever.
Yeah.
And it's always the least generous interpretation. It's always the version that paints someone else as a villain.
That's true. That is, we can end it on that quote. Yeah. Painting someone else as the villain. That could be using Cobra Kai.
Yeah. Twitter sucks.
Twitter sucks. Don't
Cobra Kai is awesome. What a great place to end.
I love that. Oh, that was great.